basically go through a few things. Number one, we'd like to understand a little bit more about what Pastor does in his own words. Number two, we're going to ask him what he thinks would be the highlights and the lowlights of the past year. He's been with us for about how long already? I know, but I want to know how you feel. It may be actually like 3 years, but it may feel like 30 years. 3 years. So Pastor has been with us for 3 years, and basically we want to find out what are his highlights and lowlights so far, and then we're going to open it up to anyone. If you have a question, a burning question that you've wanted to ask him, and that he's been evading you after Sunday, this is the chance. He's got nowhere else to run. Okay? So, to start off, Pastor, what exactly do you do? I know, I don't mean it that way. I mean, what do you do with the Lord?
Okay. Yeah. When they asked me to share the portfolio, it suddenly occurred to me I don't know what the pastor does. How do you define it, right? What do you say? So this was one thing I found, and a lot of words which basically talk about what a pastor does. You've got all kinds of things in there, and that's one of the difficulties. How exactly do you define what a pastor does? So I went back to the Bible. Okay? This is what my seminary lecturers told me a pastor does. First is the idea of a priest. A priest is the person who brings people to God, carries their prayers before God, does intercession, that kind of thing. So that's part of what I do in a congregation setting, and praying for people and carrying their concerns and their burdens before God. The second role is prophetic, or as a prophet. There was once when I went, a visitor was coming by the church, so I said, "Hello, I'm Pastor Augustin," and he said, "I'm Prophet John." And I shut my mouth after that. He outclassed me at one role. But the prophetic role is when if the priest brings the people to God, the prophet brings God to the people, right? So bring God to the people, the word in season. It comes through preaching, through teaching, but it also comes through counseling, words of advice, over a cup of coffee, what should I do, at each and every point. And the difficulty about being a pastor is to know what is my opinion and what I hope is God's opinion. So if John were to come to me and say, "What should I do?" Go. Go is good as general and it sounds nice. Right? But that's part of the difficulty. And I guess a lot of what a pastor does in terms of development, in terms of training himself, is to discern the voice that comes from God and the voice that is my own, right? And sometimes a bit difficult to tell. The other one is shepherd, which is a more common thing about pastors, and this is all the stuff that has to do with caring. Most people have no particular need for a pastor. Seriously. It only happens when you're in trouble. Because the first person you call is your doctor, the second person you call is your pastor, or the other way around, depending how serious things are. And generally speaking, my job is to work my way out of a job. My job is to see what God's calling is in your life, help you to realize that calling, and get you going. So once that is done, then I'm not. So it's not so much, and that's the fourth picture, it's not so much being super pastor running around doing everything. That's not what I'm meant to be. But it is to help each one of us realize our fullest potential in God. The picture, Lee asked me about a vision. The vision that I've always had, the desire that I've always had in my heart, is to see something in a person, help them to discover that something or realize that something. The fullest potential. This show Parenthood was running for a while. I've never seen the show except for this one part, right, where the kids are going off to school, the mother rolls down the window and screams at the top of her voice, "Be all that you can be." And both the kids put their head down and walk very quietly, right? We have tried doing that to our sons. And it didn't work. But I firmly believe that the be all that you can be cannot be without God, without His picture in our lives coming to pass. So that's basically what I'm trying to do, and that's more or less what is in my heart in that sense. Yeah.
Are there other slides?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
I forgot.
Wow.
Oh, okay. This is the nuts and bolts of what I do. Coming out of a conversation from someone who sat with me for lunch and asked me, what exactly do you do as a pastor, right? I went to Australia about 10, 12 years ago, and yes, Sonia, I will say that from time to time. One of the occasions, we were actually at a conference, and some of us went out for lunch, and we were sitting there talking and all that, and suddenly somebody asked me, "So what do you do?" And I said, "I'm a pastor." And his jaw dropped, and he was quiet. Then he said, "I'm very sorry." I said, "Why on earth are you sorry?" Then he continued, "I thought you had a real job." That happens to me a lot of times. There was once when I was visiting a family, old lady with my wife, and she grabbed my wife's hand, held her. "You poor thing. You have to work so hard. You know, you have to take care of the family, you have to go to work, you have to do all of these things." Then she turned and looked at me. "You never mind, only 2 hours 1 week." So, happens. Just to let you know, that is more or less what I do. Okay? As a pastor in the LCM, I serve not only BLC, but also the greater church, both in the KL district of the church, as well as the LCM in general, that's all over the country. My passions are in education and in churning out insane numbers of papers. So for some reason I get thrown into many committees. All
Can I
kinds.
know what in the world is a minutes committee? There's a committee for minutes?
Yes, there is. The General Assembly is coming up next weekend, and I was really hoping to register as a delegate, you know, come in, sneak out, that kind of thing. And I found out I'm on the minutes committee, so I take minutes. 3 days, from morning till night, take minutes. Okay, so that's more or less what I do.